do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys had a nice weekend. I know I did. It was great. Watched a lot of hoops. Read my book. Finished it. Read like 500 pages in 3 days. It was great. Okay, that's what happens, man. Like when you pick up a really good book, you just kind of tend to fly through it, or at least I do. But I had to put the book down on Friday night and on Saturday afternoon, because Saturday afternoon, Indiana played what was a pretty important game, right? At home, final home game of the year, senior day, all that good stuff. And Indiana hosted Ohio State, and Indiana just continues to win all the games that they're supposed to win. Okay, they were more talented than Ohio State. That's why they beat them on the road in Columbus earlier in the season without Malik Reneau. And that's why they were favored to beat them at home at Assembly Hall. They were favored by 2.5 points by the time tip happened. Okay, the best thing, like the thing that I walk away from this win thinking about, is Trey Galloway played like a fifth-year senior. You look across the country in college basketball, and there are fifth-year seniors, sixth-year seniors having major impacts for every good college basketball team in the country. And Trey Galloway, in 4 of his last 5 games, has started to have that impact. And it's nice. It is, seriously. And I think we saw the full effects of that yesterday. He played like a fifth-year senior that had played significant minutes every year of his career. I mean, he started 85 games for Indiana. I mean, at some point, you just kind of assumed that he would figure it out and he would start playing like it. And we saw it yesterday. And we didn't see it earlier in the season. Like when the year started, he seemed kind of timid, took some bad shots, turned the ball over a little too much, was lackadaisical defensively. Like he wasn't a good defender. And I don't know what happened, but all of that has changed. Okay. And he played arguably his best game of the year on Saturday. And he's been playing his best basketball of the year over these last couple of weeks. Defensively, he started guarding at a much higher level, which he always should have been a good defender. Tall, long, decently athletic. And his and Miles Rice's defensive effort have played a huge role in the turnaround for the Hoosiers this season. Okay, the offense from Trey Galloway has also been a large part of why Indiana has started playing better. I've talked a little bit about Miles Rice and how he started to, knock down some more jumpers, and he's getting to the rim and all of those things. But we're seeing a similar thing from Trey Galloway. Okay, he scored 15 or more points in 4 of his last 5 games. Okay, the one game where he didn't score 15 or more, he played less. He played 25 minutes. That was against Washington on the road. Indiana blew them out. So he didn't play as much. He usually plays around 35 minutes a game. And if he played an extra 10 minutes against Washington, he probably gets to 15 because Washington just isn't very good. And before this stretch of 5 games, he just hadn't been scoring consistently. He'd have like this random outburst from time to time where he'd score around 15. His season high on the year is still 18 against Providence, right? But Providence isn't very good. Before this 5-game stretch where Indiana currently is 4-1, Trey Galloway had only scored double figures in 8 of Indiana's games this year. Meanwhile, in 4 of the last 5 games that he's played in, he's scored 15 or more. Okay? And before this 5-game stretch, he'd only scored 15 points or more twice all season. And once again, he's now scored 15 points or more in 4 of his last 5 games. He's scoring more. And that has been a huge lift for this Indiana offense. I talked about this last week, but Malik Reneau and Omar Ballo, you know what you're getting from them. You know that they're both going to score. One of them is probably going to score, 15 or more. They're both going to rebound. Omar Ballo is going to protect the rim. Like their baseline, pretty consistent. Okay, you know what you are getting from them. The issue for Indiana this year and last year and the year before that has been the guards. The guards for Indiana just haven't been good enough. Okay, like they weren't scoring. And now, over this 5-game stretch, Trey Galloway has picked up the scoring a little bit. Like I said, 15 points or more in 4 of his last 5 games. He started to become more impactful offensively, and that's a large part of why they look so much better. Okay, like you have to have guards that can score in the world of college basketball. And Indiana hasn't had that for the majority of the season, but they've had it here as of late, and they've been better because of it. And it's not just the scoring from Trey Galloway. Okay, the playmaking as well has been really good. Like that's gone up a level. Okay, and it hadn't really been that way for him for the majority of this year. But since the UCLA game, the assists just keep piling up for Trey Galloway. 6 against UCLA, 9 against Penn State, 9 against Purdue, 7 assists against Washington, 4 against Oregon, and then 6 yesterday against Ohio State. For comparison, before this 6-game stretch, he'd had 3 games all year with 6 assists, and he'd never had more than 6 assists in a game this season. Now, in 5 of his last 6 games, he's had 6 assists or more in 5 of them. Yeah, he hasn't turned the ball over while playmaking more either. For the most part, he has kept the turnovers down. He had 6 against Penn State, but he had 3 or less in the other, 4 games that he had 6 assists or more. Trey Galloway has finally started playing like a 5th-year senior. And I think we saw all of it in that game against Ohio State on Saturday. 16 points, 6 assists, only 2 turnovers. The biggest thing, though, and the reason why I say that he played like a 5th-year senior is when the game was, in the balance, both teams are kind of bouncing back and forth. The Indiana offense hadn't been very good for most of the day. Neither had the Ohio State offense. And Trey Galloway stepped up, and he had a huge shot. Okay, Ohio State had been up for most of that game. Indiana had just been kind of hanging around. Then, in the second half, Indiana finally goes on a run. Finally. Okay, with 11 and a half minutes to go, Indiana's down by 10. It's 46-36. And then the run happens. 3 minutes later, game's tied 49 apiece. A quick 13-3 run. Galloway picked up his 4th foul during that stretch, but he checked back in. He checked back into the game while the game kind of kept going back and forth. He comes in. Indiana's down 53-51. There's a little over 5 minutes left. Ohio State pushes the lead up. They're up 56-51. And this is I'm sitting at home and I'm watching. I'm just like, all right, this is normal Indiana, keep it close, whatever, but they don't close late. Felt like Ohio State was about to go on a run. But then Trey Galloway steps up, hits a big 3 to pull it back to within 2 with about 4.5 minutes left to go in the game. Okay. And then we get a nice little dose of Malik Renew on the block. He gets fouled twice, hits 4 free throws in the next 90 seconds, and all of a sudden, Indiana is up by 2. Right? 58-56. Game's close. It's tight. Then with about a minute and a half left to go in the game, Trey Galloway hits a big 3. I mean, just huge. And I can't really call it a dagger because they were only up by 5. Ohio State still had a chance to win that game. But, everyone's freaking out. I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the shot clock. I'm like, the shot clock's wrong. But apparently it wasn't. Mike Woodson cleared that up in post game. I guess that, he and his players didn't understand the rules. And if they lost that game because of that, then I'm sure I'd be harping on that. But they won, so who cares? Okay. So Trey Galloway, shot clock's running down. He calls for a ball screen because that's what Indiana wants to go to, him and Malik Renew. And Ohio State does a great job. They just blow up the screen. They're like, you are not getting downhill. Trey Galloway's like, that's fine. He has this little hesitation to create just like a little bit of space. Pulls up going to his right. Hits a big 3. Assembly Hall erupts. They're cheering on Trey Galloway. He's come a long way since he was booed earlier in the season. It's just a huge shot, and I don't know if he takes that shot with that much confidence earlier in the season. Here is Mike Woodson talking about his senior Trey Galloway and how proud he is of just how far he's come throughout the season.
I couldn't be more proud because he's caught so much hell, and it was only fitting that he hit the biggest shot of the game tonight, to really seal it and give us the cushion that we needed to win. So I couldn't be more proud of Trey Galloway and his career he's had here on this basketball floor. As a group, we haven't experienced very many losses in this building. We've won a lot of games in this building, and Trey's been a big part of that because he's been with me from day one. Anthony's been a part of it from day one. So I'm proud of all of our players, but I'm proud of those two guys especially because they've been with me the longest.
Mike Woodson, final game at Assembly Hall as the head coach. Congrats to him for winning. Congrats to Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal. It's, their final games at Assembly Hall as well. And, as I said before I play the audio clip, I don't think Trey Galloway takes that pull-up three at the start of the season. Okay, I think he forces a pass to Malik Renew because that's where the ball was supposed to go, and or maybe he throws the ball into Ballo, and then Indiana gets like a bad late post touch too far away from the basket with Omar Ballo or Malik Renew. Okay, like that's what I think happens early in the season. But we've seen this improvement from Trey Galloway. Okay, he's gotten more confidence, especially over the course of these last 5 games, and he's better for it. Okay, like his development throughout the season as a point guard and all those other very important things it's been huge for this Indiana team. It's why they've won 4 of their last 5. He's just started to play better. Okay, and Woodson mentioned in that clip that Trey Galloway has taken a ton of flack during his time at Indiana. And rightfully so. It's because it's been pretty clear from the jump that Trey Galloway had the makings of being a great player. Okay, like that guy we've seen these last 5 games is who I thought we'd get all year. Okay, I'm sure that's what you kind of expected from him. Like, 5th year senior, like let's act like it. And he hadn't. And finally, at the end of the season, when Indiana really needed it to go on a run and make the NCAA tournament, he's finally become this reliable 5th-year senior, the ones that we see all over the country in the world of college basketball making major, major impacts. Okay, he's finally become that, and Indiana is much better for it. Like this is why teams recruit the transfer portal. This is why Rick Pitino made it abundantly clear earlier in the season that he doesn't recruit freshmen anymore. He's going straight transfer portal because 5th-year seniors do what Trey Galloway did on Saturday afternoon against Ohio State. Trey Galloway had the presence of mind in that moment to know that the offense hadn't been great. For reference, it had been 3 minutes of game time since Indiana had made a shot from the field. All their points had come from free throws. In fact, they hadn't hit a field goal since Trey Galloway hit that 3 to pull them to within 2. Okay? So he gets some space, pulls up, hits just a huge shot, crowd erupts. And once again, I don't think he takes that shot at the start of the season. Okay? Josie chiming in the YouTube chat. You can watch the show on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Usually we're streaming on Twitter, but Twitter's down right now. Maybe. I don't know. I can't get on it. So, problematic. But anyway, Josie chimes in and says, over the hump, extend Woodson. I'm assuming that that's sarcasm, but I'm also going to assume that there are some people out there who have this stance. Mike Woodson in his time at Indiana hasn't been perfect. It not even close. Okay. He's lost a lot of really close games and, things haven't been great things haven't met that Indiana standard of winning Big Ten championships and going to the Final Four and doing those things. With that being said, Mike Woodson is going to leave at the end of this year, leaving Indiana much better than he found it. Because Sean Miller tanked this program. Okay, missed the tournament, 4 years in a row. Indiana hadn't made the tournament in 5 years. And then Mike Woodson shows up. And once again, I'm not saying that Mike Woodson needs to stay. I'm not saying that things have gone perfect. I'm just saying that he has made the Indiana basketball program more respectable than it was when Sean Miller was the head coach here. Mike Woodson shows up. They hadn't made the tournament in 5 years. And for the first time in a decade, Indiana is more than likely going to make the tournament 3 times in a 4-year stretch. It's been a decade since that has happened. It hadn't happened since like early Tom Crean years. Okay, once again, a decade. All right, so yes, the Mike Woodson's time here at Indiana hasn't been perfect. Archie Miller, thank you, Josie. I keep saying Sean Miller. It's Archie Miller, but once again, Mike Woodson's time here hasn't been perfect, but he has done a good job of reestablishing some, not all, of the respect that Indiana as a basketball program deserves. Once again, they're probably going to make the tournament this year. That's kind of what it seems like based off of Joe Lunardi's latest, bracket prediction. Obviously, bid stealers are still very much a thing. Indiana, if they can beat Oregon on Thursday, I'll feel great about them making it into the field of 64. But if not, then we'll kind of have to wait and see how all the other conference tournaments shake out. Speaking of conference tournaments, Joe Jackson of Boiler in the Stands, he is set to join the show coming up here in about 4 minutes, where we're going to talk about the Big Ten tournament and, all the teams, who's playing well, who's not. It's going to be really good. You don't want to miss it. Joe always does a really good job. So Joe Jackson comes your way talking Big Ten tournament here in about 3 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Stream is finally up on Twitter, maybe. I don't know. Twitter's been acting really weird this morning. Either way, the show continues on. Joe Jackson of Boiler in the Stands joins the show. Joe, what is going on, man? How are you?
Doing good. It's the best time of the year, so appreciate you having me on to talk some hoops.
Hey, thank you for finding the time. So let's start with this weekend. You know, Friday night, Purdue goes on the road to Illinois, a really tough place to win, so I don't want to be overly critical. But, like, when I watch Purdue, I feel like a million things have to happen or go right in order for them to win. Do you kind of feel the same way whenever you watch them play?
Yeah, I mean, I think with their defense, well, the way it is, right, obviously not good or not great at all, it just limits their margin of error. And so they rely on tough shot making, which Braden Smith and TK are two of the best in the entire country at, and can bail them out. And basically probably should have bailed them out in that game, honestly. Purdue missed some shots down the stretch where it's just like, oh yeah, they should make those shots, and that's how you kind of end up losing. And I think it's because the difference between like this team and even some Purdue teams in the past or things like that is like other teams, you know, that they could buckle down and get a stop when they absolutely need it. Now it feels like if Purdue has 2 to 3 misses in a row, that's going to turn into a 7-0 run for the other team, and that's really, really tough to overcome. If that's you almost have to play defense by simply just scoring the ball more on offense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When it comes to the portal, what do you think Purdue is going to be looking to add this upcoming offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it'll obviously depend on who transfers out and things like that too. And right, I believe, unless something's changed recently, they're going to 15 scholarships next year, so it's going to be a whole new world. But if by my guess, you're going to look for some sort of wing that can handle the ball. And obviously, right, a wing that can handle the ball, like that can also play defense, is not the easiest to come by, and everybody's going to be after them. But somebody like that is going to be, I think, pretty important. Probably some sort of true and proven big. I think, right, you trust Jacobson, you trust Burgess's development for next year, but next year is like, you've got to go all in. They are going to be, I don't know exactly where they'll end up, but I would be shocked if they're not a top 5 preseason team. They have every chance to make a deep run to go win a championship, and so you kind of got to go all in. So I would expect them to probably go after some sort of true big, some sort of wing that can help with ball handling when needed, and maybe kind of like an in-between, like stretch 4 that can defend, shoot the ball. But I do think a lot of it's going to be focused on defense.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with him, because like you said, like when you have Braden Smith, like you just kind of tend to get a good shot every time down, and if he doesn't create something, then Trey Kaufman this year, like, are you surprised at how good he's been this year?
This level, yes. I figured he would be good. I believe I had him preseason on like one of my Big Ten teams, all Big Ten teams, but I think it was more like the third team instead of the first team. Like if Braden Smith didn't exist, he would maybe just be Big Ten Player of the Year, and obviously John Tonje has been awesome too for Wisconsin. So sort of, I guess, is the answer. Like I figured he would be very good, but there's just what he is doing this year is incredible. Teams, you stay one-on-one with him, he is going to score the ball. You double, he's, especially throughout the season, I think really progressed as a passer. That floater that he has out of the short roll with Braden Smith, like, it is just unstoppable. You're really just hoping that he misses if you're a defense. And right, I think like Braden and TKR, I think fit perfectly together, where you can kind of just run pick and roll over and over, and they're going to get you a good shot, 80-90% of the time. I think those two together is probably the best offensive pairing in the country, I would say, in terms of just like purely like how they fit together and how they're both able to produce. It's been unreal, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
It really has been. Joined by Joe Jackson from the Boiler in the Stands podcast. You can also read some of his writing where he covers the Big Ten over at the Feed the Post Substack. So I want to switch gears and talk a little IU. Why has Trey Galloway been so much better these last 2 weeks?
I mean, it might just be as simple as, right, there comes a point when it's your last season and it's your last season and you kind of you have to buckle in. And I think Indiana has been looking for somebody to step up in the guard room. And it is, I don't know if funny is the right word or whatever adjective you want to use. But the two guys that have stepped up are Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, right? And imagine saying on November 4th, right, the start of the season, that, hey, IU's going to sneak back into the tournament because Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal really stepped up right at the end. And Trey Galloway I think he's fully taken back over as kind of the lead guard. He understands, I think at this point it is at least his team offensively, he is what makes this team go. Also, you combine that with IU playing not much two bigs. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's Renew and Balo do not share the floor too much together. So now Galloway has more space to work, and he has more space to get downhill. And he's so good at that. He's also so good at that floater. But if the big gets behind, his defender on the roll, like Balo, that's a lob every time. So it's just, he has turned into something that IU can rely on for the most part, and they have been searching for that all year offensively.
They really have, and when he plays well, and you talk about the guard room, I think Miles Rice has been much more impactful than he was earlier in the season as well. When I watch Purdue, I think their ceiling's pretty obvious. I think they're a Sweet 16 team at best. Maybe they get a good matchup and wind up in the Elite Eight. If Indiana gets in, because we still have to watch out for bid stealers, is this a team that could be a double-digit seed that goes on a run to the second weekend?
I mean, if you asked me that a month ago, obviously everybody probably would have laughed. But at this point, they beat Michigan State, they beat Purdue, they got a good win against Ohio State. They have quality wins. They're playing very well. I think it'll probably be somewhat matchup dependent, but I don't know. It's March, anything can happen. And the thing that stands out with them is they seem to be peaking probably at the right time right now. And sometimes that honestly just matters more than what your actual talent level is, because you could be the better team all year, but if you struggle within the past 2 weeks and you can't turn it around, somebody that's playing well is going to beat you.
Yeah, and Indiana could be that team because they're playing really well right now. Joined by Joe Jackson from the Boiler in the Stands podcast, where he covers Purdue. He also covers the entire Big Ten over on the Feed the Post Substack, which you should go and check out. I want to talk about just kind of the Big Ten in general right now. I think that if you told me that Maryland was going to finish second in the Big Ten this year, I don't think that I would have really believed you. They're good. Obviously, the Queen freshman, that's one of the better freshmen in the country. Gillespie's had a really good season as well. How good is Maryland, and are you surprised that they finished this high in the Big Ten this year?
I mean, based on my preseason thoughts, yes, but I think pretty early on it felt like, oh yeah, this Maryland team has some juice to them. Obviously, they play a super weak non-conference schedule. So I guess you did have to wait a little bit, but no, this team's good, and the starting five is just so good and so balanced. And I'm sure we'll talk about March and Big Ten a little bit more, but I'm not super confident in any individual Big Ten team. But if I had to pick one for March, it'd probably be Maryland, just because. Right. Jacoby Gillespie is an all Big Ten dude to me. Derek Queen's an all Big Ten dude to me. Julian Reese has been proven. He's a senior. He's almost a double-double type guy. And then Rodney Rice and Selman Miguel have been awesome in their roles too. I don't know exactly how people would order those 1 through 5 in terms of best to worst, but I am very confident in almost every single matchup that they have that Maryland will have the best, third, fourth, and fifth option, and their first and second option are also pretty good. Now, obviously, they don't have much depth. Jordan Geronimo has showed up a little bit lately. But when you have that talented of a starting five and a starting five that works so well together on both ends of the floor, they at least have the upside to go on a deep run to me.
So I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question because I don't want to make it sound like you're doubting Michigan State and Izzo. So is it just because you like Maryland starting five more than Michigan State's? Is that why you like them more in March?
I think so. I think what it is Maryland to me can win in a few more ways than Michigan State. But the other thing is Michigan State has just dominated how they want to play. So I've definitely come around on Michigan State over probably the past month of like, okay, no, this is a team that, if I was to pick my two most confident teams, it probably would be Maryland and Michigan State. The only thing that concerns me with Michigan State is like what happens if they get, I don't know, they'll be a 2 seed. So say they get a 7 seed that can just shoot lights out or just get super hot. Like, can Michigan State keep up? But at the same time, Jace Richardson has really emerged. Jay Akins is playing better now recently too. Like, they have dudes that can go score, and they dominate everywhere that they need to. They dominate the paint. They get out and run. They are going to play fast for 40 minutes because they play the 10-man rotation and everybody's going to be fresh. They are elite defensively, especially on the perimeter. Elite on the glass on both ends of the floor. Like they check a lot of boxes of just like, oh yeah, that is a really, really good basketball team. The only concern, I guess, and differential is like, I have a little bit more confidence that Maryland can win a 90-85 game, but also a 60-55 game. And I have just slightly less confident that Michigan State could do that come March.
That makes sense, especially with just the lack of shooting from Michigan State. That's always a concern for me because, like you said, like if you can't shoot the ball and you run into a 7 seed who can really shoot it, then like that's kind of problematic. Joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands and the Feed the Post Substack, where he covers all of the Big Ten. What happened to Michigan? Like, they looked so good. Now they're 2-4 in their last 6. They've lost, I think, 3 in a row now. Like, why have they kind of fallen off a bit?
Yeah, I think part of it is just the offense, and I don't know. I don't want to say teams figured out the Wolf Golden pick and roll, but there's definitely been a drop off in that where it's just not an automatic, pretty much bucket that it was for a long stretch. There's also the whole I think since January 12th, they have not won a game by more than 4 points. Now you could take that as, oh, we're really good at winning close games. You could also take that as, hey, they probably should have lost a couple of those just based on like normal math and probability. Like, you're going to expect to lose a couple of those, and now it's kind of caught up to them in a big way. The defense has been good, but the offense has just really fallen off. The shooting hasn't been good. I'm looking now. Yeah, they were the 17th best 3-point shooting team in the Big Ten during Big Ten play. I believe that's probably only ahead of Michigan State. So you have the shooting falling off. The turnovers have still always been an issue. And right, the Wolf Golden, although still very good pairing, it probably hasn't quite been at that elite level that it was when Michigan looked like a team that could make a Final Four potentially or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like the importance of shooting in college basketball, I think, has just gone up compared to like even like recent years. Like, I think over the last 3 or 4 years, like if you can't shoot the ball, then I'm probably not going to pick you. Why do you think that's become more of an emphasis across college hoops?
Yeah, I think it's one, just with people understanding the value of a shot. It's like, oh yeah, this is a better shot than a lot of these mid ranges and things like that. And also just, I think as that's happened, especially now we're getting to the point of where these college kids grew up like with this era of 3-point shooting. So now they're just better. Right. And yeah. I think back, like my freshman or sophomore year of high school was kind of the start of the Warriors dynasty. And I'm a couple of years removed from college. And so I was, even when I played high school ball, like the 3-point shot was starting to take over then. And now it's obviously been a full decade. So now kids have been that has been a focus for a long time. So now players are even just better and better shooting the ball. And so now coaches can rely on it more, and they understand the importance of the spacing and the value of the shots. And it just, right, it can just swing things so quickly. Bringing it back to Purdue, Illinois, there was, the Illinois started the game 3 of 3 from 3. They then went 2 of 20, and then I think they went 5 of 6 down the stretch. And so they had a couple stretches in there where it was Purdue missed, Illinois 3, Purdue missed, Illinois 3. That's a 6-0 run in less than a minute. And that can just, especially in March where it is win or go home, a very high variance tournament, but that is also what makes it such a fun tournament. The ability to swing games in the matter of a minute or two just from 3-point shooting really can't be overstated.
It can't be. Once again, joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands, where he covers Purdue. Also has a Substack called Feed the Post, where he covers the entire Big Ten. Bringing up Illinois, I'm just very intrigued by them because I felt like early in the season, they blow out Indiana, and all of a sudden everyone's like, can Illinois make a Final Four run? And then they have this really kind of like Purdue-esque stretch where they lose 3 in a row and they're getting blown out, but now they've won 3 in a row. What do you make of them? And because I think this is a team that could potentially go on a deep run. Where are you at with Illinois?
Yeah, I think the ceiling is there, and they're going to probably be a 6 or a 7 seed, maybe an 8 seed, depending on how they do in the Big Ten tournaments. And right, say they're an 8 seed, which I don't think is super likely. They're probably more of a 6 or a 7. But if they're an 8 seed, I promise you, no one seed will want them in their corner. Not that Illinois for sure would win or anything like that, but there's just that ceiling that they have shown. And we talk about 3-point shooting. It's kind of sometimes as simple as that with them. They put up tons and tons of threes. They have not shot the 3 well in their 3-game winning streak, though, as I just look at this right now. 31%, 38%, 37% of their last 3 games. And that's really all it takes because the defense is starting to get back to a good level. The biggest thing Illinois is seems healthy besides Morez Johnson, who's out, but I think it's going to try to come back for March Madness. So now this defense is starting to improve over the last 3, and they're getting enough 3-point shooting. That's really all it takes for them because, right, Yakuchonis is awesome, Avicic is awesome, Will Riley's shown he can be a bucket, and they got good complementary pieces as well. Trey White, Kylan Boswell, Ben Hummerkaus, that can do their own thing, and now it fits all together. And I do think the ceiling is undeniable. At the same time, you have to acknowledge the floor of this is a team that less than 3 weeks ago lost by nearly 50 to Duke. And I understand Duke's super elite, but there is that ceiling and the floor for Illinois. But to make a deep run in March, you have to have the ceiling, and they do have that.
They definitely do. Like you said, I get it's Duke, but 50? Come on. That's crazy. Yeah. 2 more questions for you, Joe, and then I will let you go. Last team that I want to ask you about. Oregon's won 7 in a row. Why have they been better?
The defense has been better. They have started getting KJ Evans back into the rotation. He almost fell out of it completely. And they're going to be a team that we'll see how the bracket plays out. But I think they'll be a sleeper for me to make a deep run. This is also just what David Altman does, it seems like. And I forget which broadcast had the stat, but I believe over the last however many years, he has the most wins in March out of any head coach, which is wild considering how many great coaches there are. But that's just what his teams do. They get hard in March. Last year they won the Pac-12 tournament and then almost went to the Sweet 16, and that's just what his teams do. But KJ Evans has started really getting back in the rotation, and when Evans and Nate Biddle have shared the floor this season, it has been, by defensive rating, has been would be the best defense in the entire country.
Oh wow!
So now you get him back in, the defense is really stepping up, and they got dudes that can go get buckets. Right, Jackson Shelstad is one of the most clutch players already in the Big Ten, one of the fastest players with the ball in his hands. He can be an elite shot maker. Nate Biddle is been probably the best big in the conference to me this year, both offensively and defensively. And then you got guys like Angel and Keyshawn Bartholomew, TJ Bamba that can go shoots or get you buckets. The talent is there. I think there was a stretch where the defense wasn't quite good enough, and that seems to be turning around stuff.
Okay, joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands and the Feed the Post Substack. Make sure you go check out all of his stuff. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Jackson CBB. Last thing for you, who wins the Big Ten tournament this week here in Indy?
I'm gonna go Maryland over Wisconsin in the final. I think Maryland is a team built to win tournaments, but I will say that if they play Illinois in their first matchup, that could be a really, really fun one, and both teams are kind of pretty hot.
They are. So is Wisconsin. I'm glad you brought them up. We talked about them quite a bit the last time you were on. They've been playing really well here as of late too. The Big Ten's it's very deep this year. Like, I don't think there's one great team, but there's a lot of really good teams.
Yeah, I'm with you. Right, and Michigan State, I think at this point has to consider as a very, maybe not elite, right? They're not Duke, Auburn level, but they're on that next tier. And then there's just a whole lot of teams behind them that are like, well, yeah, I could see you losing in the first round, or I could see you ending up in Elite Eight. And then, yes, that's just kind of where the Big Ten's at, a deeper conference, but not quite top heavy.
Yeah, I completely agree, Joe. Thanks for your time as always. Best luck to you as you cover. Are you going to be here in Indy for the tournament?
Yeah, I will be.
Sweet. Best luck to you, dude. I will talk to you later. That is Joe Jackson. You can check him out on Twitter at Joe Jackson CBB. Does a great job covering Purdue over on the Boiler in the Stands podcast. You can check out his Substack Feed the Post. He's really good. He does a great job covering the Big Ten as a whole. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, free agency is happening. It's in full, well, almost. Okay, it's like the legal tampering period. Trades are being made. Rumors are flying all over the place. But we haven't heard anything about the Colts, which is pretty typical Colts free agency when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket. 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. I know I did. Read a great book. Watched a lot of hoops. Can't really complain when those are the things going on. But I am about to complain because the Indianapolis Colts, as they do, are just so incredibly annoying. And, checking Twitter, I got my Adam Schefter tweet notifications on. That way I'm up to date on all the things happening. Okay. And, I'm seeing all these different things, let me just pull up my Twitter here. J.C. Horn extended by the Panthers, now the highest paid defensive back in the NFL, as he should be. Dude's a stud, right? I'm getting notifications about Evan Ingram, tight end from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's visiting with the Denver Broncos. Aaron Rodgers, he might go to Pittsburgh. Okay, Devontae Adams signed by the Rams. Seeing all this stuff. Steelers made a trade for DK Metcalf, gave up a second-round pick, also made him one of the highest-paid receivers in the NFL. 5 years, $150 million. I won't lie, $30 million a year. It's a lot to give a wide receiver. Josh Allen, bro got paid. Okay, Seahawks, they're cleaning house. Okay, the Raiders, they got a quarterback. Daniel Jones probably going to stay in Minnesota. Who told you that one? Me. That's you. Meanwhile, nothing from the Colts. Haven't heard a peep. Hasn't been a murmur, a whisper, any sort of information about anyone. When it comes to the Colts, they haven't extended anybody. They haven't released anybody. There's no rumors of Colts are rumored to be targeting such and such quarterback to bring in and compete with Anthony Richardson. Where are the insiders? Come on. Like they aren't even in rumors. And this is like the Colts are an important piece for this free agency period because they're looking for a quarterback. And usually any team looking for a quarterback is talked about quite a bit. And the Colts are just like, nah, it's going to be quiet. We'll sign some quarterback no one's ever heard of off of someone else's practice squad. Maybe we'll give Jake Bean, is that his name? The guy from the preseason this year that everyone fawned over for a little bit because he was just a lot of fun to watch and he was athletic. He's like a quarterback out of Kansas. Maybe that'll be the competition for Anthony Richardson this season. I don't know. As of right now, though, it seems like they're pretty content to do what they normally do. Sit on their hands. Just like, we just want to sign the right guys. We just want to sign horseshoe guys. And speaking of horseshoe guys, I'm back on this again. The Colts should undoubtedly make a trade for Trey Hendrickson. Okay, if you're not familiar, just one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Led the NFL in sacks this year with 17.5. He was second in the NFL in sacks last year with 17.5. He has more sacks than any other player in the NFL over the last 2 years. He would immediately make this Colts pass rush elite. Chris Ballard loves the trenches, loves his edge rushers. So I wouldn't put it past him to make this trade. The issue, though, is Trey Hendrickson is expensive. Okay? And with that being said, in addition to these Adam Schefter tweet, notifications that I get about, Devontae Adams signing with the Rams and J.C. Horn being extended and DK Metcalf being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I also get these notifications of when players restructure their contracts to create more cap space. I get those notifications as well for like every other team except for the Indianapolis Colts. Why don't they restructure contracts? Like this is a very important offseason for the Indianapolis Colts. They need to sign a new quarterback. They need to bring in some offensive line talent. They need to bring in, a corner and a safety. Like they have things that they need to address right now. And yes, they have some cap space, but not as much as some of these other teams. Like the Dallas Cowboys, a laughing stock of a franchise over these past few years. You know what they've done a really good job of so far this offseason? Restructuring contracts to create more cap space so they can go out and sign more free agents. The Colts, who once again have like 18 unrestricted free agents, haven't re-signed or extended anyone. They haven't done that once. And this just seemed like a really good year to restructure contracts and figure out a way to create more cap space. That way they could actually do something in free agency. The year that, Chris Ballard told us that he was going to bring in competition and do all these important things in free agency, this seemed like the year, to like restructure a few deals here and there, create a little bit more cap space, trade for Trey Hendrickson, sign a legitimate quarterback, do things that would actually improve the roster. And we haven't seen them do any of it. And the closer and closer we get to free agency actually opening, the legal tampering period, whatever that's called, or whatever that is, I just like the closer we get to it, the more and more obvious it seems that the Colts aren't going to do anything. We're going to get good old same old. And then, the draft's going to happen and someone's going to ask Chris Ballard, hey, you talked about competition. Well, maybe they'll ask him. I don't know. You talked about competition and free agency and how all these things are really important. And you signed 3 free agents. Can we just know why? And and he's going to be like, well, we really tried, but, it takes 2 to tango. This guy wanted too much money and all this kind of stuff. The thing is, if you're a general manager in a small market of a team that's not very good, like the Colts, you're going to have to overpay for things. That is just the simple reality of it. If you're a good football team, you don't have to do that. But the Colts aren't a good football team, so they have to. And the Colts are going to remain silent. We're going to continue to see all these other teams do all these other amazing things, and the Colts are going to do absolutely nothing. When we come back, top of the hour, 11 o'clock, Adam Schefter, stuff just keeps on pouring through. Khalil Mack staying one more year in Los Angeles with the Chargers, 1 year, $18 million, fully guaranteed. So good for him. But, I'll continue to kind of look into that. If any breaking news happens, that we'll have it first right here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, Indiana, they're probably going to be in the NCAA tournament. I'm going to talk about that. Also, Purdue loses to Illinois. Not the most surprising thing in the world when you think about Purdue and who they are. So my thoughts on Indiana being in the tournament and Purdue's loss when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether it's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me and watch the live stream there. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps, or maybe you can just listen on good old 1430 AM. Jeremy Fowler reporting that Colts right tackle Braden Smith and the Colts have agreed to terms on a revised contract to remain with the Colts in 2025. He will still be a free agent next offseason, though. Okay. Great. Love that. Okay. So he's still there. Colts have a right tackle for next season. They have a left tackle for next season. Will they have a center? Probably going to be Bortolini. Will they bring back Will Fries, though? That is the question. Got to find a way to kind of lock him in, because as soon as he hits the open market, his, the amount of money that he's going to go for it's only going to go up, because that dude's a really good football player. Okay, so we'll see. Can the Colts figure it out with Will Fries? Hopefully they can. I know guards aren't the most popular thing. They are here in Indianapolis, but they are important. Like if you want to run the football up the middle, which is where most teams run the football, then you need good guards. Like you do. That is just the simple reality of it. Now, Indiana, they, with that win over Ohio State on Saturday, looks like they're going to be in the field of 64. It's just Indiana, doing what they've done all year. We're winning every game that they're supposed to win. They finished the regular season undefeated in quad 2, quad 3, and quad 4 games. The issue is they're only 4-12 in quad 1 games, and that's why they're on the bubble. Okay. But they're going to have an opportunity to improve to 5-12 in these quad 1 games when they rematch Oregon here in Indianapolis on Thursday. Okay. So that's another opportunity for a good win against a good Oregon team that's playing really well right now. I think even if they lose, Indiana's in the tournament. Okay. Especially after that win against Ohio State. A win or two in the Big Ten tournament would really solidify their status. I don't think that there would be a world in which they didn't make it if they beat Oregon, which would obviously be nice. Like, I don't want to have to worry about other teams winning and losing. And I got to be honest, like, I don't want to watch, a whole bunch of these other, conference tournaments. Like, I just want to be able to sit there and be like, you know what? I want to watch basketball because I like watching basketball, not because I'm worried about whether or not Indiana is going to make the tournament or not because of bid Steelers. So beat Oregon on Thursday and you're in. Okay. Like, that is the reality for Indiana. And in terms of them making the NCAA tournament, last time I checked, Joe Lunardi, he had them like in the field of 64. Okay. Like they're one of the last 4 buys. Okay. So that means they'd be like an 11 seed playing against a 6 seed. Okay. So that's where they're at right now. They're the last of the teams in the last 4 buys. So we'll have to kind of wait and see, who steals bids, how does all that kind of work? And, we'll see what happens. Purdue, they are firmly in the tournament. Seed, though, just keeps on dropping. Like at one point this year, they were like a projected 2 seed. They are not that anymore. Joe Lunardi has them as a 4 seed right now, which is not great, not terrible either, though. So, we'll see. I think if they go on a run, maybe they can find a way to get up onto that 3 line, and that would be great for Purdue. We'll see. But if they'd beaten Illinois, that would have been nice, and Purdue losing that game has to be so frustrating. It does, because so many things went right for them when they in that game. Trey Coffin-Wren just continues to be dominant, man. 29 points, and super efficient. 13 of 23 from the field. Braden Smith almost had a triple-double. 18 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds. Yeah, I mean, the dude was just everywhere. Fletcher Lawyer, he had 14. Jakari Harris and CJ Cox combined for a very efficient 15 points. And that's usually enough for them to win. You know, like if they get some help from some of these other guys, and, you know, if Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith continue to be great, because that's what they are, then, you know, like they usually win those games. But they didn't on Friday. And they did a good job on the glass. They only got out rebounded by 2. Illinois outshot them from 3, as Joe Jackson, who was on earlier in the show, mentioned. You know, they hit a bunch late, hit a bunch early, but like had like a stretch where they went 2 for 20. But like Illinois didn't even like shoot it that great. Like 37% is not crazy. The reason they lost, though, comes back to their lack of size, which is something that we're going to continue to talk about all year. And the other thing that they've really missed, or that they didn't do on Friday, they didn't force turnovers. They only forced 8 turnovers against Illinois, and that's just not enough. You know, like when they were beating everyone, they were forcing around 15 turnovers a game. That 4-game losing streak, they were forcing about 7.5 turnovers per game. 8 for Illinois on Friday just isn't enough. So there was a lack of turnovers. The lack of size and rim protection showed up again. They put Illinois on the line 25 times. Illinois hit 21 of 25 free throws. And this, once again, goes back to the lack of rim protection from from Purdue. Okay, like they only had 1 block. And when you're fouling your opponent that often, like you're not going to win. It's not going to happen. And a lot of those free throws came from the guards. Like the guards on the perimeter for Purdue just didn't do a good enough job at keeping, you know, the ball handlers in front of them. Okay, and I'm going to keep saying it. I'm sure you're probably tired of me saying it at this point, but the way for Purdue to win games is obvious. Like it is. But a lot has to happen for them. You know, Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman have to be great. You know, one of the other guys has to score. They have to rebound. They have to force turnovers. They have to not turn it over themselves. They have to keep teams out of the paint. And they're capable of doing those things clearly. Like, that's just a lot to do. Against better teams, it becomes much tougher to check all of those boxes. And that's why Illinois beat them on Friday night. Like, Purdue's a good team. Okay? But so is Illinois. Illinois, if they made a run to the Sweet 16, like that wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. If they made a run to the Elite 8, that wouldn't be super shocking either. Final Four, I would be surprised. But we talked about Illinois like they were a Final Four team earlier in the season. Okay, like that's a good basketball team. And this is my concern with Purdue. How do they look when they play against better teams? You know, when you go back earlier in the season, when it felt like they were beating everybody, it's because like the teams that they played weren't very good. You know, all of a sudden they started playing the Wisconsins and Michigan States of the world, and they started losing. So as of right now, when you look at Lenardi and his bracketology, you know, a guy who does a pretty good job of seeding teams, he has Purdue on the 4 line, playing Akron in the first round. That's a good mid-major. And in the second round, they would probably play Arizona. Are you picking them over Arizona? I don't think I would. Just because they're small. There's a major lack of size. The defense just isn't good enough. It's just not. No, there's no other way around it. Someone tweeted at me earlier. C-Fitch tweeted at me earlier and said I should do a Colts free agency wish list today, leading up to the tampering window at noon. My wish list is simple. Go get good players. I don't really care what positions they play. Just go get dudes that are actually good at football. Not good enough, right? Because, you know, we talked about this, you know, with the Colts. There's just a lot of good enough. You know, it's like, they're, you know, good enough on the offensive line. You know, Jalen Jones is good enough at corner. Like, I'm so sick of good enough. Like, go get great or really good. You know, like go get someone that when they walk out onto the field, I know that they can make a play. Okay, that is my wish list for the Colts and their free agency stuff. Okay, another thing on my wish list for as of right now is for the Pacers just like to start playing better. They lost back-to-back games to the Hawks over the weekend. Okay, like the Pacers embarrassed themselves. Now, I know Tyrese Halliburton didn't play, Jonathan, and, if he plays, then the games probably go differently. No doubt about that, right? Like when the best player on your team actually plays, then that helps you win games, okay? It does. Either way, the Pacers are good without Tyrese Halliburton. They are. Like, if they didn't have Halliburton, this is still a team that could, make the play in and maybe, and do all that kind of stuff. Okay? You can't blow back-to-back games when you have a lead going into the fourth quarter during one of the most important stretches of your season. I talked about it last week on Friday. I was like, look, like this upcoming stretch for the Pacers is really important. And it's a tough stretch. Okay, at Atlanta twice. They're at Chicago tonight. That game starts at 8 o'clock. And then tomorrow night, they get the Bucks at home. That game's going to be tough because they're coming off a back-to-back, and the Bucks just lost. And both of those teams are really competing for who's going to be the 4 seed. The Bucks, they lost last night to Cleveland. Thankfully, they have a half a game lead on the Pacers right now. So like that race is really tight. Okay, so that game's going to be tough. And then they're at Philly, and then they're at Milwaukee again. Right, they're in the middle of this really tough stretch, and like all these games, except for the games against the Bucks, are against teams that aren't very good. Like the Hawks are a play-in team. The Bulls are hanging on to a play-in spot. The 76ers are terrible. And they needed to beat everyone and split with the Bucks. That was my expectation for them. That's what I expected from them. And now at best, they're going to go 4-2, but that's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to go more like 3-3. Okay. And, the Pacers clearly missed Halliburton, but still, like you have to win those games. Yes, I know they missed Tyrese Halliburton's playmaking, and he's their best 3-point shooter. I think we forget that sometimes because the playmaking's so good. Like, they didn't shoot the ball great in either one of those games, even though Pascal Siakam, on, I guess, would that have been Friday night? Whenever they played the first game, he goes for like 35, and then Benedict Mathurin, Saturday night goes for like 30. Like, they each had a great game individually, but like that just wasn't enough. And on the nights where the Pacers don't have Tyrese Halliburton, the one thing that I expect for them to be really good at is their defense. Like, I just kind of expect for their defense to be better when Tyrese Halliburton doesn't play, because Tyrese Halliburton's not a great defender. He's been better this year, forcing turnovers, just being in the right spot defensively. But like, they just weren't good enough defensively in those 2 games, giving up over 120 points in each of them. You have to defend better than that. They need for Andrew Nembhard to start scoring a little bit more, just being better offensively. He keeps struggling, and neither one of those things happened. They didn't defend great, and Andrew Nembhard was average at best. And they've started this really tough, really important stretch of games. 0-2. They play the Bulls tonight. Need to win this one, and then tomorrow night they're on national TV. They host the Milwaukee Bucks. Big game. Okay, they're currently half a game back from the Bucks for the 4 seed, and they're only up a game on the Detroit Pistons. So, once again, very important stretch here for the Indiana Pacers. Hopefully, they can figure it out. So, we'll have to wait and see. Just like we're waiting to see what the Colts are going to do. Still waiting on that Will Fry's extension to come through. Something that I think everyone can agree would be a very good thing, because this Colts offensive line isn't great. Before Will Fries got hurt last year, he was pretty good. He was. That's just the really simple reality of it. So hopefully we get news of that extension coming up here pretty soon. Hopefully Schefter or someone breaks that news today. We'll have to wait and see, though. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, your Indiana Hoosiers looking good. They look good on Saturday. Why have they been better? Comes back to one guy in particular. Trey Galloway. I'm going to tell you why he's been better when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether it's YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, join the chat to be part of the conversation. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. Or maybe you're listening via that Indie Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Colts news of the day, Braden Smith and the Colts have modified his contract to keep him around one more season. He's still set to be a free agent next season in that 2026 offseason. So right tackle, check. Got to find a way to keep Will Fries here. Guards are important, believe it or not, especially if you want to run the football the way that the Colts do. You know, athletic guards that can pull around the outside and block in space and all those things are important. And Will Fries is a guy who has been able to do that. So hopefully the Colts can keep him around. Still waiting on any other news to break. I promise you if it does, I'm going to have it right here for you. Indiana beats Ohio State on Saturday. Big win there. Indiana just winning all the games that they're supposed to. John Buzzard, I'm with you. John Buzzard chiming in saying he hopes that Chris Ballard didn't give up free agency again for Lent. I'm with you. I hope he didn't either. I just hope for his sake because he talked such a big game. I mean, just huge game about, you know, like competition, you know, like we have to have competition. And, you know, he talks about, you know, how he needs to be more aggressive in free agency and all these things. And, you know, he's ran his mouth a lot about it. And I just hope that he backs it up because if he does not, I think, you know, the fan base is already pretty fed up with him. And if he does nothing about it, then I am going to assume that, you know, people are really going to be on him. So we'll have to wait and see, though. Maybe Colts fans will just kind of roll over and take it. That's just kind of what seems to happen. Anyway, Indiana beating Ohio State on Saturday, just winning more games that they're supposed to win. They were favored by 2.5 going into that game. Obviously, they covered, ended up winning by 6. The best thing about this win, though, for Indiana was Trey Galloway. Dude just played like a senior. More specific, he played like a fifth-year senior. A guy that has played significant minutes every year of his career at Indiana. I mean, the guy has started 85 games for Indiana. And at the start of the year, just didn't seem that way. He's timid, took some bad shots, turned the ball over, wasn't a great defender. I don't know what happened, but, you know, like that's all changed, and he's playing arguably the best basketball. He is playing his best basketball of the season this year, maybe the best ball of his career in general these last 5 games. Okay, and I think we saw all of it on Saturday. He has started guarding at a much higher level. You know, his and Miles Rice's, you know, defense have played a large part in the turnaround for Indiana. Okay, the offense from Trey Galloway has been, you know, a large part of it as well, though, right? Because he's just become more reliable. Like when the ball's in his hands, I feel comfortable. Like that's really kind of my question of like, are you a good offensive player or not? Like there are some guys when they touch the ball, I just want them to get rid of it as soon as possible. Okay. You know, and then there's guys like Braden Smith where it's like, okay, like this guy has the ball. The right decision is going to be made and everything's going to be cool. Trey Galloway has, you know, started to like live in that territory of, okay, cool. Like the right guy has the ball right now. And, you know, we've seen that, you know, these last couple of weeks, you know, he scored 15 points or more in 4 of his last 5 games. The one game where he didn't was against Washington, where he played less than 25 minutes. For reference, he's been playing around 35 for most of the season. And before this stretch, he just hadn't been scoring consistently. He'd have these random offensive outbursts from time to time where he'd really score it. You know, he had 18 against Providence early in the year. And before this 5-game stretch where, you know, where Indiana is 4-1, Trey Galloway had only had 8 games where he scored in double figures. In his last 5 games, he's got 4 games in double figures. Okay, he'd only scored 15 points or more twice this season before this 5-game stretch. And in his, you know, in 4 of his last 5 games, he scored 15 points or more. Like he's just starting to become a more reliable offensive option in terms of his ability to put the ball in the basket. And that has been a huge lift for Indiana because Omar Ballo and Malik Reneau have been steady all year. Okay, like they have been reliable on both ends of the floor. You know what you're getting from them. The issue has been the guards. Like Indiana just hadn't gotten enough production from Trey Galloway and Miles Rice. And Trey Galloway has started to become more impactful offensively with his scoring. But it hasn't just been his scoring. He's also been playmaking at a much higher level as well. And that hasn't started until recently. Right? Over his last 6 games, he's been racking up the assists, going back to that game against UCLA. So we had 6 assists against UCLA, 9 against Penn State, 9 against Purdue, 7 against Washington, 4 against Oregon, and then 6 yesterday against Ohio State. And for comparison, before the UCLA game, before this 6-game stretch, he'd had 3 games all year where he'd had 6 assists, and he'd never had more than 6 assists in a game this season. Now, in 5 of his last 6 games, he's had 6 assists or more. Okay, he hasn't turned the ball over while playmaking as well. Okay, for the most part, he's kept the turnovers down. He had 6 against Penn State, but in all the other games, he's had 3 or less. Okay, Trey Galloway has finally started playing like a fifth-year senior. And we saw all of it against Ohio State on Saturday. 16 points and 6 assists, only 2 turnovers. Okay, he hit a couple of big shots, and that was the biggest thing. You know, like I sit back and I watch all this college basketball, and there are definitely some exceptions to this rule, Cooper Flagg being one of them, where it seems like every time a team needs a big shot, it's an older player. It's a fifth-year senior. It's a 24-year-old knocking down the big shot. And Indiana just hasn't had that. And they had that on Saturday because Trey Galloway stepped up. Ohio State had been up for most of the game. Indiana had been hanging around. Then, you know, in the second half, Ohio State created some distance. You know, with about 11 and a half minutes left, Indiana down by 10, 46-36. And they needed a run to happen. They needed one. And they got it in that spot. Three minutes later, Indiana goes on this 13-3 run. Game's tied 49 apiece. But during this run, during this stretch, Trey Galloway picked up his 4th foul. Okay, so Woodson pulls him out, checks him back in with like around 5 minutes left to go in the game, right? You know, game's going back and forth. Indiana's down 53-51, right? And Ohio State pushes the lead to 56-51. And I kind of felt like that was going to be it. It felt like, all right, here comes Indiana, you know, can't finish close games. Ohio State's about to go on this run, and that's going to be it. But Trey Galloway hits a big 3, pulls it back to within 2 with about 4.5 minutes left, right? So it's 56-54. Now it's time for a little bit of Malik Renew on the block. You know, he gets fouled twice, you know, over this 90-second stretch, hits all 4 free throws. Indiana goes up by 2, 58-56. Then, with a minute and 24 seconds left, long scoring drought, still 58-56. With a minute and 24 seconds left, Indiana's freaking out. Okay, you know, pointing at the shot clock. The shot clock's wrong. The shot clock's wrong, even though it wasn't. And, you know, so there's like 8 seconds left on the shot clock. Indiana goes to the thing that you know that they're going to go to, and that's a Malik Renew ball screen for Trey Galloway. And Malik Renew comes up. He sets the screen. To Ohio State's credit, they blow it up. Not working. 3 seconds left on the shot clocks. Like, someone's got to shoot it. And Trey Galloway hits it's just a little hesitation, pulls up, hits the 3, puts him up by 5. It wasn't the dagger, but it was a huge shot. I mean, just huge. And Trey Galloway looked so confident when taking the shot. It's like where has this been all year? Like, where has this version of Trey Galloway been? Mike Woodson was asked after the game about the big shot hits from his 5th-year senior.
I couldn't be more proud because he's caught so much hell, and it was only fitting that he hit the biggest shot of the game tonight, you know, to really seal it and give us the cushion that we needed to win. So I couldn't be more proud of Trey Galloway and his career he's had here on this basketball floor. You know, I mean, as a group, we haven't experienced very many losses in this building. I mean, we've won a lot of games in this building, and Trey's been a big part of that because he's been with me from day one. Anthony's been a part of it from day one. So I'm proud of all of our players, but I'm proud of those two guys especially because they've been with me the longest.
Mike Woodson right there just talking about how proud he is of Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal and how they've been here the whole time with him and all that kind of stuff. So, but he started by talking about Trey Galloway not knocking down that big shot. And I don't think Trey Galloway even attempts that shot at the start of the season. I think he finds a way to give Malik Renew a really tough post-entry pass, and then he takes a really tough shot over probably two defenders, and it's 58-56, and we're all at home sweating, biting our nails. Okay, but I think this 5-game stretch for him has just been good for him. Like, he's become much more confident, and you can see the confidence in that shot. And Mike Woodson mentioned in that clip that Trey Galloway's just taken a ton of flack during his time at Indiana over the last 5 years. I mean, the dude got booed earlier this season. And the reason why is because that dude should have been awesome. Not just for like this 5-game stretch, but like he had has all the makings of a great player. Seriously, like he does. He's like 6'5". His arms are freakishly long. He's a pretty decent athlete. Okay, like, is he like an NBA guy? No. But like, he should have been a really good college basketball player. And the guy that we've seen Trey Galloway be over these last 5 games, that's what you and I expected all year. That's who I thought he would be. That was the expectation for him that Indiana fans had. It's taken him forever to get there, but he's finally become that. And Indiana is obviously much better for it. It's amazing. It's like when your starting point guard is a fifth-year senior finally starts to play well. It's almost like everyone else kind of starts to play well. And that's what fifth-year seniors should be there for. Okay, like he finally looked like a senior, taking shots when he needed to, making the right play, setting up his teammates. Like I look around college basketball, and like maturity and age wins. It's why Rick Pitino was pretty adamant. He's like, yeah, we're not recruiting freshmen anymore. We're going to go get some of these older guys. And, I mean, it's worked for Rick. St. John's, they're really good this year. But that's what fifth-year seniors are for. And just thinking back on how that game had gone, Trey Galloway knew at that moment that Indiana's offense hadn't been great. They hadn't hit a field goal since he'd hit that 3 that pulled them within 3 minutes of game time earlier in the game. The offense had been stagnant, so he comes up, he gets the ball. Once again, credit to Ohio State. They blew up that screen and roll, but Trey Galloway created some space. He pulled up and he hit a big shot. Okay, he doesn't do that at the start of the season. And that's part of why they were bad to start the season. And as he's become more and more aggressive offensively, Indiana has gotten better. That is not a coincidence. It's not. Okay? And once again, I know, Jonathan, what a take. When your starting point guard plays well, you play better. But it's not just about Trey Galloway playing well. He's just finally playing at a level that Indiana fans rightfully expected from him to start this season. Okay, and it's been fun to watch, because like this is part of the fun in watching, college hoops. You get to see these guys develop and get better, and that is, for me, something that I really enjoy watching. And we've kind of seen it over these past few games. Trey Galloway has just kind of figured out a way to be more impactful, and that's been the biggest development for Indiana during this stretch. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, the Colts continue to sit on their hands. Purdue loses, and it's not great. But we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts. Let's do something. Let's extend Will Fries. Let's do something more than just make sure that Braden Smith can come back for a year. Okay, like let's do something a little bit more than that. My thoughts on the Colts and this free agency when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
It's in today's sports world. It's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether it's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. Watch the live stream there. You can also follow the station at Ticket 1430 if you want all the updates on the Dan Dockett Show, which is live today from noon to 3. And if you, and you can also download the Indy Sports Ticket app. You can also listen to both my show and the Dan Dockett Show there. The Indianapolis Colts should just go ahead and trade for Trey Hendrickson. And if they could do something interesting, that would honestly be fantastic. Colts, they already announced that they're bringing back Braden Smith. They reworked his deal, so that right tackle position is, filled for this season. I'm not going to say that it's secure, but it is filled. Braden Smith is going to be back. He's going to be playing right tackle once again for the Indianapolis Colts. Now just waiting on that Will Fries extension. Okay, if we can get that extension, that would be great. I would greatly appreciate that. Okay, now I would also appreciate it if the Colts would just go ahead and trade for Trey Hendrickson. Makes way too much sense. Okay, it just does. Okay, he played for Lou Anarumo. Okay, the Colts' new defensive coordinator. He was really good in that system. He has more sacks than, anyone else in the NFL over these last 2 years, 17 and a half. So that's 35 sacks in the last 2 years. That's pretty freaking good. Okay. He had 17 and a half sacks this year, led the NFL. Last year, he had 17 and a half sacks, second in the NFL. Okay. He would immediately make this pass rush for the Indianapolis Colts elite. And as we know, Chris Ballard loves the trenches. Chris Ballard would marry the trenches if he could. Okay. He loves his edge rushers. So I wouldn't put it past him to make this trade. I still find it highly unlikely because Trey Hendrickson is expensive. Okay. And the Colts have multiple needs. They need another edge rusher. They need a corner. They need a safety. They need offensive line depth. They need another running back. Now, the NFL draft hasn't happened yet. So, there is still time. They're going to use that as well to try to plug some of these holes. But I'm a big proponent of you want proven commodities over unknown commodities because, that's what the draft is. We're going to have all these draft analysts sit around and, we're probably going to have them on the show. And they're going to tell you that this guy's going to be good for all these different reasons, and this guy is going to be good for this reason, and all that kind of stuff. But no one really knows. It is the ultimate lottery. Now, obviously, people get paid a lot of money to know, and if they don't know, to figure it out. But I'm just a big proponent of, we want guys who are proven. And the Colts repeatedly avoid going and getting guys that are proven. And I would like for that to change. So I would love it if they could trade for Trey Hendrickson. But as I was saying, the issue is money. And this is another thing about the Colts that really not bothers me, but I question that I just don't get. All these teams, the Cowboys, I think, are a great example this offseason. All these teams, when they don't have the cap flexibility that they want, when they don't have the amount of cap space that they would like to have going into an offseason, what do? They restructure contracts. They take money that's supposed to be paid in year 5 and they pay it, in year 3 instead. Or if a guy's supposed to make, $20 million this year, they'll take 10 of it and they'll pay it to him later on in the contract. And it frees up cap space so these teams can spend a little bit more money. Colts, they don't do that. They don't. It never happens. And it is problematic because the Colts need more cap space. They need more money to spend because quarterbacks are not cheap. Cornerbacks are not cheap. Linebackers, not cheap. Good ones, at least. Okay, so they need to figure out a way to restructure some of these deals to get, some better players so that they can spend more in free agency. But that's not happening. Once again, the only thing that they've done is, bring Braden Smith back for one more year. They restructured his deal, and that's it. And outside of that, they've just been so silent. Meanwhile, all these other teams are doing things, and it's good teams, or teams that I expect to be good. Okay, meanwhile, Colts just chilling. Seahawks, they're cleaning house, traded Geno Smith, traded DK Metcalf. Okay, the Raiders, they got a quarterback. They traded for Geno Smith. Aaron Rodgers, he might end up in Pittsburgh. That seems more and more likely. He and Mike Tomlin are quite fond of each other. That would actually honestly be the best place for Aaron Rodgers to go, because Mike Tomlin is no nonsense. Okay, does a really good job of keeping drama and things under wraps. Isn't going to be pushed around by Aaron Rodgers. Because that's been the issue. Aaron Rodgers just showed up and pushed everyone in New York around and said, we can do things my way or I'll retire or whatever, right? You're not doing that in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin. You're not. Okay. And I'm sure that Aaron Rodgers would like being there because they have DK Metcalf now, right? They made that trade, extended him, paid him $150 million over the next 5 years, which is crazy money for, a wide receiver, right? And then, the Bills, they extended Josh Allen and 3 other players, good players on their roster, and the Rams went out and got Devontae Adams, and Daniel Jones is expected to re-sign with the Minnesota Vikings. Meanwhile, nothing on the Colts. Hey, we're bringing back Braden Smith. Fantastic. Can we do something else? There hasn't been a murmur or a whisper or anything about what the Colts are doing this offseason, which doesn't make any sense to me because the Colts are in the quarterback market, and they've made it abundantly clear that they are in the quarterback market. And usually, when you're looking for a quarterback, your name is at least mentioned. Adam Schefter had a report this morning about, Justin Fields and the teams that were after him. And then it was like, oh, by the way, Justin Fields is also in Dubai. So that's cool. And so they aren't even in those types of conversations. So what are they doing? I don't know. Absolutely nothing, apparently, which is not very surprising. Actually, no, it's not, because it's Chris Ballard. He stood at the podium, went on and on and on and on and on about, free agency and creating competition and doing all these, important things that we all thought were important. And, he's not going to do any of them. And someone's going to ask him before the draft or after the draft, be like, hey, coach or Chris, real quick about free agency. You said you wanted to create competition and you didn't sign anybody. Why? And then we're going to get a good old, takes 2 to tango. Got some guys wanted too much money. That's what we're going to hear from him. And it's just, same old stuff from Chris Ballard. Okay. That is where we're at with him. And it's annoying and it's frustrating, but this is where we're at. The Colts sitting on their hands, doing nothing once again. And hopefully they make something happen here at some point. And hopefully the Pacers can make something happen tonight. They are currently half a game back of the Milwaukee Bucks. The fact that they lost 2 games in a row to the Atlanta Hawks over the weekend is really frustrating because they're just simply too good to do that. I mean, I get it. Tyrese Halliburton didn't play. But when you have a lead going into the fourth quarter and you're playing against the Hawks who have some injuries and have traded some guys away, saying that the Hawks have given up on the season isn't correct, but they kind of have. They gave up DeAndre Hunter and they brought in Georges Niang and guys like that, and Jalen Johnson's not playing and all of those things. But I don't care if you have Halliburton or not. Those are 2 games that you have to win. And I get it. He's their best shooter. I think other people forget that. He's their best playmaker. He makes their engine go offensively. But at the same time, even when he's not playing, like the Pacers have a lot of good players. Like that's just the really simple reality of it. I mean, Pascal Siakam went for 35 in that first game against Atlanta. Benedict Mathurin went for 30 in that second game against Atlanta. And when you get an offensive push like that, which you need when your best player isn't playing for you, like those are games that you need to win. And they've started this very important 6-game, stretch where they really needed to go 5-1. Okay, so they played the Hawks twice tonight. They're on the road at Chicago. That game is set to start at 8:00. Can't wait to watch it because the Bulls are kind of fun. Josh Giddey playing a little better here as of late. Anyway, so they're playing the Bulls, another team that they're better than. Still haven't heard any word on whether or not Tyrese Halliburton is going to play tonight. He did something to his hip, the hip area. Man, just like his legs, man, like hurt his hip, hurt his groin, hurt his hamstring. Things are just not great. So they're playing the Bulls tonight. They need to win. There's just no other way around it because they're trying to keep pace or really overtake the Milwaukee Bucks, who currently are holding on to that 4 seed. And tomorrow night, they play the Bucks at home. Got to win that one, right? Like that is the most important game in this 6-game stretch. Okay, they need to beat the Bucks at home because later in the 6-game stretch, to close the 6-game stretch, they play at Milwaukee. And so they need to beat the Bulls. They need to beat the Bucks tomorrow night. They need to beat the 76ers in Philly, and then they need to turn around and hopefully beat the Bucks in Milwaukee. These next 4 games, very important for them. The Knicks, Jalen Brunson got hurt. So, they could slip a little bit. Like, that 3 seed could be up for grabs. So, I'm just very, very intrigued to see kind of what the Pacers look like tonight. How desperate do they play? Do they rest up to get ready for the Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow night? That game set to go at 7 o'clock. That game's tomorrow night. I believe it's 7 o'clock over on TNT. We'll have to kind of wait and see what all happens there. But we're still waiting on the Indianapolis Colts to do anything at all besides restructure Braden Smith and bring him back for this season. That is good news. It's not exciting. It's not flashy, but you do need a right tackle, especially when you have a young quarterback who you don't know how good or bad he's going to be, and you want to do everything you can to surround him with the right players so that he can actually play well. Do I expect him to? I don't really know, but just kind of sitting around waiting to hear from Adam Schefter on anything with the Indianapolis Colts. So we'll have to wait and see. The legal tampering period starts here in about 7 minutes or so. C. Fitch asked me earlier in the show via X or Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. He asked me to do a wish list of what I wanted. Good players. That's where I'm at with this team. Colts, just go get good players, bring them into this locker room, and let's just have a good football team. Let's just have good players because the Colts just don't have enough of them. They don't. Samuel Womack and Jalen Jones are good enough on the perimeter. Okay. Julian Blackmon was good enough. Tanner Bortolini, backup center, good enough. Okay. That's just what this Indianapolis Colts team is made up of. Just a lot of that guy's just barely good enough. And that's not what they need. They need legitimate game changers, guys that can step in and make really big plays and do things of that nature. That is what they need. They don't have any of that right now, and that is problematic for them going forward. That's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen. The Dan Dockett Show loaded up today. Leary at 1, Dave Revson at 1:30, Kent Sterling 2 o'clock. The Power Hour. Me, Dan, and Kent talking about Indiana, the Colts. Probably we may mention Purdue. We'll see. And all of that good stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be loaded. Thanks again for taking the time out of your day to tune into my show. Head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're live here on YouTube every day from 10 to noon. Make sure you download that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. You can listen to my show from there. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show from there as well. So make sure you download that so you're up to date on all things Dan Dockett Show and The Real Jonathan Smith Show. You can check me out on Twitter too at __ Jonathan Smith. Pacers play tonight at 8 o'clock. We'll probably talk about them a little bit tomorrow. Coming up on, later in the week, we'll have Zach Ray on for bets. Might try to get him on a little bit earlier this week just to kind of bet some of these conference games as they're kind of happening. We'll have to wait and see, but yeah, it's going to be a good week. So make sure you're checking out everything we got going on over here at Indy Sports Ticket. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.